This just popped up in my memories from 2 years ago today, and I thought it would be worth sharing here. It's definitely one of the scariest encounters I've had, and definitely taught me to trust my gut. September 4th, 2022, I was at home waiting on my boyfriend to get home. It was getting late and I was impatient, so I decided to go out to get snacks from the gas station by myself. We live in a city that really isn't the best place for a then 22-year-old woman to be out alone at night. It's normal to hear gunshots, see cars get stolen, and there have been armed robberies at both of the gas stations by my house since I've lived here. Nevertheless, I was hungry and wanted some snacks, so off into the night I went for them. On my way to the gas station, my boyfriend passed me headed home on his bike when I was nearly there, a detail that is crucial to how things would play out. It was sometime around or shortly after 11 p.m. that I made it to the 7-Eleven and pulled in by a pump. Before I even had a chance to take my keys out of the ignition, a woman was standing at my passenger side door trying to talk to me through it. Another long story short, before this had happened, my best friend and I had a couple attempt to carjack us in another city. Ever since then, I have always locked my doors the second I get in my car and had done just that this night. I stayed in my car and told her I couldn't hear her, so she walked to my side of the car. She said something along the lines of her ride not being able to pick her up because their car broke down and that she needed a ride while holding up texts on her phone. I told her, "I'm really sorry I don't help people at night," and immediately drove away. I was annoyed that I didn't get my snacks but wrote it off. Just before arriving at my house, I take a left turn, then start down a curving road with a shopping center in the right. The first light on this stretch of road leads to my neighborhood, where I make another left in. When I took my first left and approached the entrance to the shopping center, a car swerved out in front of me and stayed on the center line the entire way to the light. I kept my distance and pulled in behind them into the turning lane of my neighborhood. When we made the turn, they stopped next to the curb on the right side of the entrance. This put me on very high alert, and I passed them quickly. I'm going to try my best to describe the shape of the area of my neighborhood that this took place in for context. When you pull into the neighborhood, there is a long, straight road that has a left-hand turn shortly after the entrance and a right-hand turn further down. Both entrances connect into a loop going around the entire neighborhood, and the straight road we were on is the main road in and out that connects them. I passed them on the main road and drove down to the second turn to head to my house. When I passed, they started to drive as well and followed me at a distance. Other people pull in behind me all the time, but this just felt different. I passed my parking spot but took note that my boyfriend was home, making my way through the loop that would lead to the other entrance. For a split second, I almost thought I was overreacting and turned around, but as we made our way down the road, I knew I wasn't. As I drove slowly through the loop over the speed bumps to prevent speeding, they got closer and closer to me. Over the last few, they were so close I couldn't see the front of their vehicle. After the last bump, there is a small turn with a dumpster, and then a straight to the main road. When we hit this curve, a man was walking to the dumpster and they backed off significantly. I took this as my chance and took off away from them. I turned left back towards my house on the main road while yelling at Siri to call my boyfriend. I told him, "Come outside with XYZ," and floored it down the main road, blaring my horn the whole way. The car gunned it after me, and I prayed that my boyfriend would be outside in time. I quickly pulled into my spot, still honking, and the car skidded to a stop behind my car at an angle, so I couldn't back out shortly after I parked. Two grown men immediately jumped out of the car while I stayed in mine, horrified. They quickly started to approach my doors until they saw that someone was waiting for them. My boyfriend told them that they needed to get back in their car and leave, and to not make a single move near me again. They tried to argue, saying that I followed them and some other nonsense that I honestly couldn't understand over my sheer panic and adrenaline rush. My boyfriend was ready to stand his ground and do whatever he had to do to protect me, and conveyed that. The men eventually left, and I took my time getting out of the car, still in complete shock. The police were called and showed up nearly 2 hours later, saying they didn't see the car in the area. Wonder why? They never looked any further into it. Needless to say, my boyfriend was with me every night and would even meet me at the entrance of the neighborhood after work to ride me home for some time after. I often think about what those men would have done if I had turned around or not even thought twice and pulled in my space to begin with. Would they have followed me all the way to the police station if my boyfriend wasn't home? Was that woman a part of it? The whole thing makes me nauseous. I had a feeling for a couple weeks before this happened to keep an extra eye out on cars behind me to make sure I wasn't being followed. A crazy thing to look back on now. It's very scary to think about how things could have ended if I had let that woman in my car or didn't have someone to scare them off. To the woman who approached my car and possibly set me up, get wrecked. To the men who followed me home and intended to do God knows what to me. Let's definitely never, ever meet again. This happened in 2014 or 15. I was about 20 years old, and I'm female. I will give you some context before letting you know what happened. I was studying in a lovely seaside city in France, and everyone was cycling all the time, cycling to school, to work, to parties, etc. It was a very safe place, full of tourists and students. I lived and studied in this city between 2012 and 2015. Up until the events I'm going to mention, I never ever felt unsafe, and I didn't hear anything from my friends either. In December 2014, my boyfriend took me to his engineering school's Christmas party. We were a large group of friends and mingled a lot. One of the guys from the group, whom I didn't know personally, left the party without anyone noticing. A month later, he was found dead in the harbor, and the police never figured out what had happened. I went online to check if there was any news, and it's still a cold case. I didn't know him, but I think about it all the time. Was it because he was alone? Did he fall? Or did someone push him? Why didn't anyone care to walk home with him? Needless to say, the city started to feel a whole lot less safe. But at 20 years old, I didn't have the same understanding of such things as I do now as a 30-year-old. My life carried on. A couple of months passed, and it was the beginning of 2015. A friend was assaulted badly while cycling back home after a party. He was found in critical condition, his body lying halfway on the road and halfway on the sidewalk. His head had been smashed on the sidewalk's step, and his jaw was completely shattered. He was a big guy in every sense possible, not the sort of guy you could push around easily. When he was recovering in the hospital, he couldn't make sense of what had happened. He had no idea why he was attacked on his bike. The police didn't find the suspect. 2 students my age in the same friend circles were brutally assaulted for no reason. I still cycled everywhere because I had no other choice. I lived 8 kilometers away from my school, and I didn't have any other means of transportation. This meant that I cycled approximately 16 to 20 kilometers every day, and I had been doing it since 2012. It was the spring of 2015. I was cycling back home from a party with my boyfriend. I had had a few drinks, but I was not drunk. I was just tired. My boyfriend was annoying me because he was not waiting for me, and the distance between us kept getting bigger. Suddenly, someone jumped on me. He appeared from nowhere and kicked my bike to the floor. I had been cycling so much. I was so used to the bike. I let it fall between my legs, but I did not fall. I resisted and stood up. It was a man. I reached for my bike, which was now on the floor, with my left hand. I was trying to get hold of the handlebars. He kicked me, then my hand. He kicked again and again, but I was already holding the handlebars. It hurt, but I lifted the bike. He said something, but I didn't hear it. I saw my boyfriend looking at me. He was a bit far away, but he had stopped cycling. He was going to help me. The man would see. I wasn't alone. I was still standing and lifting my bike. It had been maybe 2 or 3 seconds since the man jumped on me. My boyfriend was looking at me, and then he turned his back. My heart dropped. He started pedaling away, It was the dead of night, and there was no one else. I was on my own. The man kept kicking. He wanted me to let go. My hand looked blue, but my grip was strong. I thought about the other 2 students. They gave me strength. I thought about my boyfriend. The sight of him cycling away filled me with pure rage. I'll use this rage. The man was holding some kind of glass in his hand. I grabbed it with my free hand and smashed it into his face. I did it. I was furious. I was getting the bike up. Surely the glass had alcohol in it because it burned his eyes. I had a split second to launch myself and start pedaling away. He couldn't reach my hand anymore, so he kicked my bike one more time. I stood strong on the pedals. He tried to chase me, but I was faster. I pedaled until I could no longer breathe. I pedaled until I felt numb. That night, I knew I'd escaped something terrible. Due to the stress, I couldn't describe the man. I'll never know for sure if my experience was linked to the other attacks. However, we were all walking, cycling on the same route. 10 years later, I can remember the look on my ex-boyfriend's face when he turned his back on me. Let's never meet either of these 2 men again. Fuck your s'mores, fuck your lighter, and fuck whatever's in the woods. About a month ago, 5 of my friends and I, 3 male and 3 female, went up to my cabin. We arrived late Wednesday night to stay Thursday, Friday, and leave on Saturday. For context, my cabin is about an hour and 40 minutes outside the city off a random highway, down a dirt road and down a steep hill. I'm mentioning this because I want you to know it's not easy to find or stumble across unless you know about it. We have neighbors nearby whom we all know pretty well, and we've never had any issues with them. Now that that's out of the way, I'll get to Friday night. Jade and Soup left the cabin to go back to the city. I made dinner for the rest of us, and we all hung out inside for a bit, drinking and whatnot. At some point, my friend Rose knocked on the glass patio door, and then my friend Joey jokingly knocked back. Bobby, who's pretty superstitious, started to freak out a little and said, "Y'all don't do that. It attracts stuff, especially since it's almost 2 a.m. in the woods." Some time passed, and my friend Rose mentioned that we still hadn't had a fire or used the s'mores we bought for the trip. After a couple of shots and a smoke, we all sprayed on bug repellent, grabbed our supplies, and headed out through the patio. When you step out to the patio, you're on a raised deck that's about 10 feet off the ground. It wraps around 3/4 of the cabin, getting closer to the ground as you near the front door. About halfway, there are stairs that lead to our lawn and a small beach since the cabin is by a lake. We have a fire pit with a shed and shooting area behind it. Most importantly, off to the side past the fire pit, there's a somewhat overgrown path that leads to a bigger beach, which belongs to a private beach association. As we went outside and down the stairs, I led the group with my phone's flashlight, which was at 10% because, of course. I started getting a bad feeling but brushed it off, telling myself, "It's fine, it's just because it's 2 a.m. and you're scared because it's dark." When we got down to the fire pit, Bobby and I started collecting wood, sticks, and sawdust from the ground nearby. It was kind of windy and waves were crashing on the shore, but as I was gathering wood, I swear I heard a twig snap or something rustle in the bushes. I ignored it and moved on. I was bent down, handing wood to Rose to put in the fire when I thought I heard someone cough or clear their throat. I felt like I was being watched from the same spot in the woods. I ignored it again. Except when I looked, I noticed Bobby was looking too, which meant he'd heard it as well. Whatever, ignore it. Bobby was collecting sticks when he said, "Oh God, I gotta wash my hands when we get inside." We all asked why, and he showed us a snapped animal bone on the ground, pointing directly towards the path. The same path we had walked on all day and hadn't seen a bone once. The fire was going, Rose was making her s'mores, and I was freaked out. I knew Bobby was too. I pulled out my notes app, wrote, "Did you hear someone?" and discreetly showed it to him. He typed back, "Yes." At this point, both our eyes kept being drawn to the path to the beach. Eventually, we started hearing noises all around us. I heard something run across the beach and into a bush. We heard children laughing between the sounds of the waves and the wind blowing. We also heard something moving in the bushes near the shed and shooting area. Still, our eyes were drawn to the path leading to the private beach. I opened my notes app again and wrote, "We need to go," showing it to Bobby without speaking out loud, not wanting whatever was out there to know what we were saying. Bobby was crouched down, watching the path, holding a huge stick like a bat, ready to swing. I was gripping a marshmallow roaster like it was a shiv, while Rose was casually asking us what kind of s'more she should make next. She eventually made another one, and we started hinting that it was time to go inside. At some point, Bobby stood up and got closer to the path. He asked for my phone, which was now at 5%, and shone the light into the woods and along the path. Suddenly, he handed me my phone, looked at us and said, "Go upstairs right now." Rose grabbed her things but couldn't find her lighter, to which Bobby yelled, "Fuck your lighter, go!" We quickly kicked out the fire and rushed back to the cabin, locking ourselves inside and barricading the doors. We sat down and asked Bobby what he saw. He said, "I looked at the path with your flashlight and saw someone's shoulder, neck, and chin. They were crouched down in the bushes, skinny and pale." Our blood ran cold. We sat in the kitchen for 2 hours, each of us holding a knife. We even went to bed with them. About 20 minutes after Bobby, Joey, and I fell asleep, Dale heard something banging around outside. In the morning, when we went to investigate, there was nothing to be found. I don't know who or what was in those woods watching us, but even if it was human, which I doubt, no normal person is watching a group from the woods at almost 3 a.m. So, to whoever or whatever was out there, let's not meet again.